This discussion will introduce differentiation with trig functions. We're going to just start by just memorizing two rules. The derivative of sine is the cosine function, and the derivative of the cosine function equals the opposite of the sine function. So derivative of sine is cosine, derivative of cosine is negative sine. Now, the student should be able to find, using those two definitions, or those two rules, should be able to find rules for all the other trig functions. And I'll convince you that you'll be able to do that by finding a rule for the function tan of x. Well, we know that tan, by the fundamental identity, is sine of x divided by cosine of x. So differentiating that using the quotient rule, we get cosine of x times the derivative of sine of x minus sine of x times the derivative of cosine of x all over the square of cosine of x. It's the low d high minus high d low all over the square of what's below. There's the quotient rule. Now, differentiating sine and cosine in the appropriate places there, we have cosine of x times. Now, the rule we just learned is that the derivative of sine is cosine. Minus sine of x times, and the derivative of cosine is the opposite of sine, so minus sine of x all over cosine squared. And this is an alternate way to write cosine of x squared, to say cosine squared. Now, we see that the minuend position of the numerator is cosine squared x. And the subtrahend position, actually that's another add-in because we have a double negative there, that's going to become plus. And we have sine times sine, so that's sine squared x all over cosine squared x. And we recognize by the Pythagorean identity that cosine squared x plus sine squared x is 1, so we have 1 over cosine squared x. And then by the reciprocal identity, we recognize that that is secant squared x. So we've just generated a rule for tangent. If you're differentiating tangent, you get secant squared x. Now before we let the trigonometric functions go, let's apply the chain rule to the trig functions. Applying the chain rule to the trig functions means that we're going to look at finding the derivative. Instead of just cosine x and sine x, we want to look at getting the derivative of sine of some function of x. Well, this derivative would equal, if we apply the chain rule, f prime of x times the derivative of sine evaluated at the inside function. And the derivative of sine is cosine of f of x. So there's the rule for sine of any function of x. And we can do the same with cosine. If we're trying to differentiate cosine composed of a function, that's going to equal f prime of x times negative sine. I'll put the negative out front, so it's going to equal negative derivative of f times sine of f of x. Looking at an example, let's say we had y equals sine of 12x squared. Well, then y prime would equal, the rule for sine is you take the derivative of the argument, which is 24x, and multiply it by the derivative of sine evaluated at that function. And derivative of sine is cosine, and we evaluated at that function.